Okay, hi, I'm Maria Shriver, and welcome to your lunch forum. Here, great pleasure to talk with somebody that I call an architect of change, Elizabeth Holmes. Most of you probably are aware of her story, CEO of Theranos. And we're going to talk blood, we're going to talk drive, we're going to talk mission, and we're going to talk changing the world one prick at a time. And we're going to do it fast, because we only have 35 minutes, and I've been told we actually have 25 minutes to talk, and then there'll be 10 minutes of Q&A from all of you. So I'm hoping this will be rapid fire, interesting, invigorating, and inspiring. Let me begin by talking to you. When I was growing up, politics was the go-to place where you went to change the world. You have said that businesses today are the go-to place to change the world. Why?
Well, first I have to say it's incredibly special for me to be up here with you. You're such a role model for women and someone who just embodies so much courage and grace in everything you do. And she's wearing my uniform. I'm kind of like beside myself here.
I said to my daughter, Elizabeth is very famous for wearing the same thing all the time as a uniform because it keeps her life simple and she can stay focused on her work, and I'm more ADD. So I thought, I'll wear her uniform. So at 5 this morning, I was trying to find a turtleneck in Los Angeles, and I was like, this is so complicated. And then I walked in, I was like, do you see what I'm wearing? She goes, aha, the uniform. And then Katie Couric said to me back there, do you know you guys are wearing the same thing? I'm like, yeah, it's kind of supposed to be like that, so this is the uniform.
So in answer to your question, I grew up in a family that still is in public service, and you look at these people who have such incredibly good intentions to do something good in the world and to serve, and so often you're tied up in bureaucracy where you don't have the ability to make a change or to see a change through, no matter how good your intention. And I've always believed that in the context of building a company and in the context of especially Silicon Valley, you have an opportunity to bring together a team of people who make a decision that they want to do something good or they want to make a change in the world. And it's a group of people around the table. And you make a decision to do something, you do it. And that's it. And
so it's more freeing? It's easier to make an impact in the world through business, you think, than politics?
I think you have total control over what it is that you decide you want to do. And I think, especially in the technology field, there's such an opportunity to create technologies that can do good. And the application of technology toward making a difference in the world is so profound that, therefore, in the context of business, you have a real opportunity to serve and to change things. And that's not to say you don't in politics, but you certainly are positioned in a business context to do what you decide to do. And your only limitation is yourself.
You were just referred to as starting a blood diagnostic company, and we were talking a little bit earlier, and you said actually it's a healthcare business. Yeah. And I've read that you said that you set out to transform healthcare, disrupt it, shift it. Are you a disruptor? Are you a transformer, a revolutionary when it comes to healthcare?
We have a vision and a dream for early detection and prevention, and we want to change our system in such a way in which early detection and prevention can become realities. And that's why we do what we do, that's why we work the way we work, and that is the output and the intent of every product we design.
But is the goal, like, I looked at this healthcare business and I saw that it was flawed, deeply flawed, and I'm going to disrupt it. I want to turn it on its head, and I'm going to do it through blood.
The goal was I looked at people I had to say goodbye to too soon and believed that there's nothing that is more powerful in the context of a product that I thought I was capable of creating than one that could help to shift that. And then how do you do that? And working backwards from that to the healthcare system as it stands, the fact that people are so disenfranchised when it comes to access to their own health information, and the fact that people don't understand that they have a right and they have access to information that could be incredibly useful for them, but is presented to them in such a way in which they're almost treated as if they're not intelligent enough to be able to handle it, and therefore don't engage with it, and therefore the healthcare system.
So you're 19, you work your whole kind of high school, you have your eyes set on Stanford, that's all you want to do is get there. You get there, and you start thinking about the healthcare business. You start thinking about blood. You start thinking about how you could shift it, and you then say, I'm going to drop out, and I'm not going to go work for one of the big competitors. I'm going to start my own thing. Where'd you get the chutzpah to do that? And why did your parents let you, since I won't let my kid get out of college? So I'm
You know, my parents were phenomenal. They let me take the money that would have let my dad retire, and that they'd saved to allow me to go to Stanford and put it into the business. And that gives you tremendous confidence in the context of sort of that blind faith. I didn't plan to do exactly what we're doing now, but I was at Stanford and I was spending all my time trying to think about how would you build a product like this. And we were spending all this money on all these classes that I wasn't going to, and so it just seemed logical not to continue to do that.
But what made you think you could change the way blood is analyzed, the way how accessible it could be? What made you think at 19, I can shift this whole paradigm?
I didn't know that I could, but I knew that I wanted to spend my life doing it, and I wanted to spend my life trying. And I had absolutely no idea how we would do it, but I knew that this was what I wanted to work on, and I felt like this is what I was put on this earth to do. And so I knew that this was where, you go to school, and the purpose of school to me was always to learn the tools to be able to pursue what you love. And I felt like I had those tools to be able to now go obsess over what it was that I wanted to be doing no matter what.
So you go and you start this company with some money from your parents, and you say you didn't know exactly what you wanted to do, but you knew you wanted to do something like this. Yeah. Was there a moment when you said, aha, I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm capable of shifting?
There were many. I mean, the first was when we developed our first patents and we developed our first architecture for the systems that we're building, and we realized that we were thinking differently, I mean, completely opposite the way that everybody has traditionally been thinking in this space. And we had a little lab that was smaller than the size of this stage, and the first time that you get data showing that these concepts could actually work, I mean, it's the most addictive feeling in the world.
What is that feeling? What was that moment?
That moment is you've created something that's like your baby, and it's come to life. And I mean, I've never done drugs, but I'm assuming it's like cocaine. I mean, it's like incredibly addictive, I mean, you've created something that all of a sudden is real, and you work so hard and you fail so much that by the time you've actually reduced something to practice, I mean, I think it is the human spirit in its best, is this concept that you start with that turns into a dream, that turns into reality. It's beautiful.
Why did you think blood was the avenue to disrupt everything?
We didn't know that, but I spent a lot of time thinking about the people in my family that I've lost, and how it can't be that we find out that someone has stage 4 cancer and nothing was going on in their bodies for 5 years, 10 years before that, and that it can't be that all of a sudden you see a tumor and that appeared from nowhere. And so I started learning and studying this space and became really interested in the fact that lab decisions drive 80% of physicians' decisions in the context of taking care of someone. And if a physician doesn't have access to lab information, then they're really handicapped in the context of the ability to take care of someone. And so our interest became, how do you make that lab information accessible at the time it matters? Because if you look the word diagnose up in a dictionary today, it will tell you to define the presence of disease from its symptoms, which means by definition, when we're figuring out someone is sick, they're already sick. And we need to change that paradigm to one in which people are seeing the onset of disease in time for therapy to be effective. And that can only happen in the blood.
So is your mission or your vision that Americans or people really all across the globe will start to say, like, I'm tired and I'm going to walk into a Theranos Wellness Center and I'm going to get a menu of different blood tests that I can call up myself and go in and get my blood drawn wherever I want that's in proximity to where I live, and then I'm going to call up my doctor and say, I ordered these tests and I did them cheap and I want you to diagnose me?
Yeah, absolutely. Our vision and our mission is first to give every person the right to do that, because in this country we can still go buy weapons and kill ourselves, but we can't buy access to our own information directly without going through a physician, which is wrong. People should have a right to their own health information. Our vision is that that information should be presented in English so that people can understand it. It's not complicated. It's like a language, but it's been made so foreign to people that they don't engage with it in the way that they could to use it to make their life better. And our vision is that we can streamline and improve the care process by enabling physicians to have access to this information at the time they see their patients. Because today, 40+% of people, when they're given a requisition from a physician to go get a test, don't actually do it, which means that even once they're symptomatic, they're not getting this information.
And they're not doing it because it's expensive, it's scary, it's inconvenient.
Exactly.
All of the above.
All of the above.
And you're changing that, so you're now in Walgreens
Yeah.
in Arizona, in about 50 of them. Why did you start in Arizona, not California?
Many reasons. One, we were able to work in a completely bipartisan way to draft legislation, which we passed, making it the first state in the country that gives individuals the explicit right to order their own health information. And it's harder in California, as you know.
To be bipartisan or to get something done?
Well, I don't know, you should answer that question. But we're working on it. It is a very interesting population in the context of the number of people there who are, for example, undocumented immigrants who don't have access to health insurance and who don't engage in the health system unless you can provide them with a really low-cost option. It's got a very interesting distribution of Medicare and Medicaid patients, and part of our work has been to be the first company to bill Medicare and Medicaid at less than they're willing to reimburse, to demonstrate that we can use technology to realize savings for federal and state programs without having to cut other programs or raise taxes, and that created a model to do it. And it's not here, so we couldn't micromanage it, which meant we could really build a model that we could scale.
You went to Arizona. Did you stand in a Walgreens and watch people come in and choose the blood tests that they were ordering, and what did that feel like?
It's amazing. I mean, what's amazing is to hear their stories, because you see, I mean, the first time I did that, I met a woman who didn't think that she was going to be able to get the test that she needed to know whether her baby was okay. She was pregnant. And you look at this, and this is real. I mean, people think, oh, well, more people are getting insurance, people are going to get health care. That's not the case. Deductibles are increasing. People can't afford a $2,500 deductible, and the result is they don't get care. And so, I mean, being able to drive home and know that because of something we've built, one person's life is better, to me, and that's the purpose of life. If we're not here tomorrow, you've done something meaningful, right?
Do you feel like you're doing something meaningful?
Every day, all the time, yeah.
So now, when you had this idea to start this company, you basically kind of, according to Laura, you went into a room, you didn't come out for 10 years, you worked 7 days a week in this outfit, 24/7, with your head down. And I was telling that to my kids the other day, and they're like, wow, really? Is that what it takes?
That's what it took us. This is not easy, and it's especially not easy in healthcare because it's so regulated and it is so resistant to change. This is an industry that, I really see it like the age of mainframes in the 1960s, and we're trying to walk in with mobile phones, not even personal computers, and And it's a space in which there's a tremendous responsibility. I think about it all the time in the context of my mom. And the information that we're generating, she does all of her tests through us, knowing that we're right every single time, and knowing that we're not compromising on quality, and knowing that we're, in every action that we take, approaching this with the seriousness that it deserves in the context of what it means to say to someone, you don't have breast cancer or you do have breast cancer, has driven our culture in a huge way. And we set out to do something that we knew would take a very long time. When I started this company, almost every venture capitalist that I met really believed that it was crazy to think that you could completely redevelop a lab, because it's not just building a glucose meter or cholesterol test, it's redeveloping 3,000 tests, and that's a very long-term project. So we knew what we were getting into, but this is a space in which there aren't shortcuts.
So really, I mean, where you go and you meet with venture capitalists and they say, this is long term, I don't know, you're 20, you're 21, and you're like, no, I'm 100% sure I'm doing the right thing, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna change the way, blood is taken, the way it's analyzed, the distribution process, the cost of it. And I mean, how did you not doubt yourself? How did you not, and did you think about giving up or packing it in?
I was calculating the other day, I think it was 7 years after I started the company when I was actually legally able to rent a car. But yeah, it's, of course you doubt yourself. You doubt yourself all the time. And I think, it's a process of training yourself not to. And it's a process of, I'm a very religious person. I think, when you see something that's impossible, believing that there's a greater reason or a greater cause and a purpose to why you're doing what you're doing is incredibly valuable, because it gives you the faith and the confidence to be able to keep going even when you have absolutely no idea how you're going to succeed, and also the belief that you're why you're doing what you do. I mean, for me, realizing as I went through the journey of building this company that this was not about me. If I were fired...
Yeah, talk about, you said that Elizabeth and I were talking before, and she said at some point in this process, she realized it's not about me.
Yeah.
Where was that turning point?
It was pretty early, and it was dealing with, I'd made mistakes. I hired wrong people. They really hurt the company, and I was looking at it and thinking, okay, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And it became really clear to me that if I were fired or if I wasn't running this company, I would still go do this, because this is what I love, and I would just start it over again and do it better. And when you start to put that in context and start to realize that it doesn't matter what your role is, it doesn't matter if you make mistakes, it matters, are you realizing the mission, and are you building products, in our case, that can make people's life better? You do it for a different reason. And so when those moments come and you're dealing with impossible things, and of course you doubt yourself, you look at it in the context of the fact that it's not about you, and it's about a mission, and that makes it a lot easier to deal with those things.
You have talked about, as CEO, a woman CEO, a very young woman CEO, about trying to create a culture at your company that allows for failure.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Because some of us didn't go start working in companies that were like, go fail, it's okay.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard, because you have to also not make the same mistakes twice, right? And so you've got to create an open environment in the context of failing. And I actually think our failures have been some of our greatest strategic assets, because we understand really, really well what doesn't work and why. And that's allowed us, especially from a product standpoint, to build much better products. But we've tried to build a culture that believes you can take the most swings at the bat and get the most home runs, and also get the most strikeouts, and that's okay. And that means, an incredibly collaborative R&D environment. That means an environment that has people who are comfortable with failing, because a lot of people can get discouraged very quickly if it's not working and it's still not working, and you're doing it again and again and again, and it's a certain mindset And I think ultimately it means building an environment in which every single person is there for personal reasons and for the mission.
Are you comfortable with failing?
I'm used to it. I mean, I don't know that I'm ever really comfortable with it. I'm the kind of person who is so focused on getting back up every time, but I love the concept of being able to build a culture, especially from a product development standpoint, that embraces it. You know?
So there is a lot of big companies that were doing what you're set out to do before you. What's been the pushback? Have they threatened to close you down? I know they say that you're secretive, you don't share your secrets, we don't know if what you're doing is good. How have you not been intimidated by that?
Well, we ignored it at first, and we knew this would happen. I mean, this is the story of technology, but what's interesting about it is how aggressive it is, especially in this space. I mean, contacting our regulators, saying false stuff about us, trying to seed false facts to investigative journalists. I mean, we've had to send legal letters because they've hired people who've pretended to be physicians in Phoenix saying bad stuff about us who just aren't even physicians, and we have no record of sending patients to us. And that's what happens when you do something new, is that you generate a reaction and it has ripple effects. And my perspective on it at this point is every single day we're serving people, and our success is determined by the quality of that service, and person by person, whether we can shift the paradigm and have people come in and have an experience that's wonderful. I mean, the emails that we get that I'm most proud of are people who have done lab testing and send us a note saying, this was fun, or this was an incredible experience. And people don't say that about lab testing. And
no, this was fun.
No. Being able to shift that is really instrumental in being able to consumerize this space that people just don't have access to today. And if we can keep doing that person by person and city by city and state by state, we'll build something great. And the rest of it, we have to force ourselves to ignore. And so I don't even read most of it now. I mean,
we're going to have questions and answers in about 4 or 5 minutes, so if people want to stand up, there's, I guess, 2 mics on either side, and you could line up. But we were talking about what are the 3, if you were sitting and everybody in here was 25, and they were all thinking of developing an app or starting a business, and half of them were young women, what would your 3 best pieces of advice be to them?
I would say first, really understand why you're doing it, because why you're doing it drives everything in the context of how you'll build a company, and the decisions that you make, whether they're long-term decisions or short-term decisions. I would say make sure it's something that you love so much that even if you were fired, you would do it over and over and over again, because you'll build it differently. And I would say do not let anybody tell you that you can't do it. I mean, I've been told that so many times. First time that I started going into meetings, with the enterprises that we were working with, people would say, "Oh, you're the assistant," and I was like, "No, I'm the engineer." But believe in yourself. I mean, we've got to, especially with young women, create a stereotype that women can be the best in science, in technology, and engineering, and women can found technology companies and be CEOs of multi-billion-dollar technology companies, and that only happens through action, and that happens by ignoring all this stuff that you hear.
Why would you tell women that that's a good line of work or a good line of life for them?
Because it's amazing. I mean, if you, and it doesn't have to be technology, but I mean, there's a lot of people who are incredibly good at it. I talk all the time about this conversation that I had with this woman who was the CEO of the Girl Scouts, and she was saying that they got the valedictorians of their class in a room together and said, raise your hand if you're going to be a leader in technology and business. And these girls were valedictorian, which means by definition they're great at math and they're great at science. And if you're that good at something, then there's a high probability that some of them love it. And she said 0 girls raised their hand. And they looked at it, and her conclusion was that they didn't have role models, right? But that's such a huge portion of our population who's just not pursuing these paths in which they could be incredible, and they could live a life of purpose and a life of love of these pursuits. And I think still we are not at a point where that is something that is socially encouraged at the ages that it matters, which is like 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 years old. And we change that through action, right?
And you were saying that that's part of, like, you know, for 10 years you were saying you didn't have a website, you didn't have a press release, you never came out, you never dated, you never went anywhere. And then part of now coming out, so to speak, coming forward, is to educate the consumer that they have the ability to take their health care into their own hands. But part of it is also saying to young women, look what I've done, you can do this too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the ability and the privilege of being able to communicate in a public way for us is completely about our mission, which is doing whatever it takes for less people to have to go through what it means to say goodbye too soon to someone you love. And as I have had the privilege of doing that, seeing what it means for little girls to come to our lab or to see this and how impactful it is to them, and we need to talk about that so that we can socialize it, so that there are more of those little girls who decide, yeah, you know, that I'm going to do that.
Okay, we have a question. Did you pay your parents back yet?
It's complicated.
Oh, how complicated.
Yes is the short answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a good story behind that. So does anybody want to stand up with the mic over here? Do we have a question for Elizabeth? Okay, we have a question down here for Elizabeth. I think you have to stand up. You have to say your name. You have to look out at all the people. You have to have confidence.
I was lucky enough to invest in this girl when she was 19.
Oh.
So I have a comment and a question. The question is because I can't reach. She's so busy you can't reach her. The disruption that she hasn't explained is that when I get a vitamin D test in Aspen, it's $225. Her retail price is $20.30. The question is, can you talk a little bit about international outside of the United States?
Yeah, it's a huge part of our work and our focus. I think there's a tremendous opportunity, especially in the context of areas of the world in which there are not developed health systems, to leapfrog over the lack of existing infrastructure. And it's something we've had the opportunity to partner with the Slim Foundation in Mexico to showcase, just in the context of diabetes, how you can go into these incredibly rural areas and begin to engage people in the context of the health system, in this case, specifically targeting people who are pre-diabetic and showcasing that you can stop this progression. We've begun investing in areas that will allow us to do work in Africa, and it is very core to our mission.
Part of it, as you were saying, we were talking about democratizing the process, making it affordable, making it global. And you have said, even though your company is now $9 or $10 billion, depending on when you're reading about it, that you're just beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that you have no interest in selling it, and you're at the tip of the iceberg. So how big can you get globally? How big can you get? We were talking about Alzheimer's earlier. How big can you get? Can you get in every area of healthcare?
Well, we have to build it right, and that means, one brick in the house on top of the other. But the opportunity in developing economies is so meaningful because, I spend a lot of time with people who think about how do you invest in education or other development programs in these areas, and these people are dying of malaria. They don't go to school because they don't have basic health care, and so where you can leverage access to real-time, in this case lab information, you can begin to build a decentralized care delivery system in which these people can begin to engage in basic health. And that's a huge part of our goal.
Hey, everybody,
and
on
our
the
dream
schedule,
for
we're a
what
little
we're doing
behind
long-term.
schedule, but on the schedule, it says the doors open in about
I was not lucky enough to
2
invest
minutes.
in your company.
That's probably
but
not
I'm
going to
fascinated
happen,
with
but
the
we
people
should
you
gear
surround
up
yourself
as
with,
if
because
it
all great companies
will
are,
happen,
as
okay?
you mentioned, the people
Thanks.
you surround yourself, you make some mistakes and you make some good choices. So here you are in Silicon Valley, all these bright young people like yourself. amazing place. And one of your great mentors and advisors is a 94-year-old former Secretary of State, George Shultz, who we hear has had an impact on you. What impact has it had on your life and your company and how you've grown it?
I just want to say George Shultz's wife, Charlotte Schultz, is here. And it's how I first heard about Elizabeth, was through George Shultz. So that George Shultz, Henry Kissinger, Sam Nunn, you have a very grown-up board.
We needed to average out my age, so it's a great privilege to be able to spend time with these people, and we're building a company that is very focused on being able to realize a shift in the healthcare system and being able to realize a shift in healthcare policy and being able to do something at a global level that is meaningful and being able to win in an environment in which a lot of companies would like us to go away as fast as possible. And so being able to learn from these people and being able to build a group of people at a strategic level who really understand long-term strategy has been a great privilege, and I spend most of my time doing this in the context of building the company, and so the opportunity to have that integrated, therefore, into my life has been wonderful.
Do you feel, Elizabeth, that there are other questions, like a leader? I mean, you see on your card, founder, CEO, but oftentimes those, for many people, they're titles and they don't really feel like I've got this and I lead and I know where I'm going. Do you feel when you walk into your space that you're leading?
Yes, but I think I feel more like I'm part of an amazing team, and I'm part of a team that I'm the luckiest person in the world to be able to go to work with every day.
Question over here.
I run an effort that's focused on trying to fix American politics. So what you said at the beginning of your conversation was particularly interesting to me. And we try and think about how we get these kind of ideas in politics. I'm curious what, if you could change one thing about the political system, if there's one sort of thing that you thinking about, particularly an issue like healthcare, what would you like to see be different if you had a magic wand?
About the political system?
Yeah.
I think in the context of healthcare, enfranchisement and empowerment of the individual, because the minute you empower the individual and the minute you create transparency, the minute you give individuals access to information, all of a sudden individuals begin to demand lower cost, higher quality services. And the minute that happens, a market begins to function. And this is a space in which people haven't even known the prices they're agreeing to pay for products and services that they're buying. And so the more that we can allow the individual to play a role, the more we can tell people you have a right to your health information, you have a right to order your own health information, the more you start to shift that whole ecosystem.
Have you found it difficult to work with governments? I mean, there's so much bureaucracy in government, and to just find your way through to get things done, have you found that difficult?
For sure. I mean, it's really hard. And some are easier than others. But I think one thing that people resonate with is that at the end of the day, we're all human and we're all patients, and we all want access to this information. We all want better care. We all want lower costs, and there's so many universal truths in this space that, for example, in Arizona, we were able, with the legislation we wrote, to have it pass unanimously in every committee, and ultimately to become legislation, and it was bipartisan. And I think that's a very powerful and a very special thing, because this is a nonpartisan issue.
Go ahead.
Talk a little more at a granular level about how you take these just few drops of blood in a vial that you might find in a dollhouse, and how you're able to do a gamut of diagnostic tests on that small amount of blood, the science behind your company, and how sort of modern medicine, genomics, and all the technological advances we've seen in really just the last 5 years, how that's catapulted your ability to do that.
Yes, in 30 seconds.
Thank you.
One of the core elements of access in terms of why people don't get access to tests is fear of needles. And so we invested a lot in being able to redevelop every test or every assay that's run in a traditional laboratory to be able to run those tests on tiny drops of blood. And so, for example, this summer, our first FDA clearance was on a test that traditionally required a huge amount of blood through these traditional vacutainer tubes. And we redeveloped the chemistry, we redeveloped the hardware, we redeveloped the software, we developed the collection tubes to be able to make it possible to do these tiny sample-based testing. And we've now submitted 130 of these in pre-submissions to the FDA to take through this regulatory process. And it really meant redeveloping the whole infrastructure because you just can't do this using the traditional framework. And part of that is because we're trying to solve a different problem, which is access to actionable information at the place and at the time that the patient sees the physician or that the patient shows up to be able to get access to their own health information. We're standing on the shoulders of giants in a huge way in the context of the developments that we've seen in the technology sector and the ability to apply those to some of these core fundamental areas in lab medicine and in other areas in healthcare. And I think we don't even know, where this is going to go, especially if we can open this field up to engage individuals and play a role in demanding lower cost, higher quality products, because when that happens, in the same way that you think about the evolution of the personal computer, it was the consumer involvement in computing that has fueled this complete revolution and amazing innovation. And I think genomics and some of these other areas are fields in which we don't even understand what's possible right now. But if we can create the ecosystem to fuel that innovation, I think you'll see the same type of revolution that we've seen in computing in healthcare.
You're looking really for the consumer to drive demand for these on a local level. You're looking for them to go to their local governments to say, we want these labs in our neighborhoods, in our drugstores. We want access to this information. We want it cheaper. We want to democratize the entire process.
Absolutely. And to say to their moms and their dads, I want you to be getting this information. I want to know that you're okay. Right?
So even though you started saying that business was the place to change the world, you're actually going to need politics to work with you.
They go together. Yeah,
they go
absolutely.
together. Was there? Oh, you had a question. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Maura O'Neill, and I had the privilege of working with your dad at USAID over the last 4 years. So he's as gracious as you are. We heard you talk about the false competition that was coming up and how much it's coming against you. What can the people in this room do to be helpful to you and this whole movement to accelerate this success?
Well, I appreciate that. I think, as Maria said, we lived kind of in a box for 10 years and didn't really talk about what we do. And I think the more that individuals begin demanding access to their own health information, begin demanding the ability to understand that information, demanding the ability to be treated like you're capable of understanding it, the more that we're going to shift the system. And the more people who say to their family members, get tested, right? The more we're going to change this reality on what it means to be asking yourself the question, what if I'd known sooner? And that's our prayer, right?
So we have time, I think, for one more question, even though they told us to wrap it up. Thank you. If there was one more question, we could take it real quick, and then we're over our time.
Hi, my name is Sujeen. brilliance as a scientist or a technology doesn't necessarily translate into effective leadership. And I'm curious, when you think about building a company and developing corporate culture and truly creating a sustainable business, where do you draw that vision from, and who do you rely on the most to give you that kind of counsel and advice?
Well, when I first started, I learned by reading. I mean, there's amazing books that have been written by people like Warren Bennis or Andy Grove about what it means to build a great business and to be a great leader. And that was how I began. But I learned more by failing, right, and making mistakes and working really hard not to do the same mistakes twice. And then by being able to pull in an amazing group of people who understand what it means to build a business for the long term and what it means to build a great company and a great product. And I think we're very blessed in Silicon Valley to be living in an ecosystem with so many people who are here for the same reason and who have been part of building these incredible companies. And I've tried to surround myself with as many people I can learn from as we've done this every day, and that changes as you go through different stages, because building a company, once you're operationalizing a product, is completely different from when you're trying to invent, for the first time. But I've learned from the people I've been able to surround myself with.
So Elizabeth Holmes, thank you so much for, so to speak, anchoring this lunchtime forum, for giving hope to young people who want to start their own companies, who want to, make their dreams a reality, to inspiring so many young women with your presence and your intelligence and your belief that young women can grow up and be just like you. And
or like you.
Or no, like you. I like you, okay. Okay. Anyway, so I think obviously you'll probably be able to come back here next year and the year after and talk about how it's changing and how you're changing as a CEO and how the culture changes, because as you were saying, that it's very different once you get out of that room and then you start to actually spread the word, and you need people to be aware. You're trying to educate an entire population while also running a company. We were talking about how athletes have to have tunnel vision and stay in the game, and now you have these two roles of being the CEO, the founder, the driver, and also the reporter of your mission and your work. So good luck with it, and thank you all so much.